Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm River Matt, and I'm the Connectionalist, and today we're going to be looking at a video. I think it's the channel's called Busy Disciple, which I've never looked at before, but there's a video that keeps popping up, and I think it's really interesting. I haven't watched it, so I'm going in blind here, and it's called The Youth Groupification of the Church. So let me say it, the youth groupification of the church, meaning like making the whole church like youth group, which I think is kind of an interesting topic, and it kind of caught my eye, so I thought we'd kind of dive into it together. I think there's going to be a lot of commentary about like the modern state of the church, especially in the evangelical and Protestant world. So let's go ahead and dive right on in.
I've noticed a weird trend in American churches, and it makes me really uncomfortable. Loud, emotional worship music, bright lights, fog machines, cool hip pastor with fashionable clothing.
What the hell?
Yeah, those shoes or something, yeah.
You like coffee? Boom! We have enough to literally drown a small village. What's that? Your kids don't want to come to church. What if I told you we have pizza?
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So the first thing, let's go back. He was talking about...
You like coffee? Boom! We have enough to literally drown a small village. What's that? Your kids don't want to come to church. What if I told you we have pizza?
Yeah, so I think a lot of this, the starting here is kind of just like something I say a lot is I say this a lot. I say the last thing this world needs in the Bible Belt, especially, is another church in a strip center, right? We do not need another church plant in the strip center that can't find any tenants. Okay. There are plenty of churches that are already out there, and every time we keep planting churches, I don't always know that there's a lot of research on this. I'm a big believer in church planting. I was trained as a church planter, and I do think we should plant in strategic places. The problem is we keep putting like a church in a strip center with like a good pastor and like decent contemporary worship, and they like expect it to grow. But the problem is like there's 8,000 churches like that, right? So you're not standing out, and it's usually just drawing somebody from another church that's already established, right? So it's really kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul. So we really have to take a different approach in how we're doing planting and really making sure we're focusing on non-religious people. And so, yeah, it's like, we don't need another church in a strip center with free coffee and modern worship. That's, you know what I mean? Like we have to be more clever about what we're doing. Like in the Methodist church right now, we're doing a lot of church plants, which is great. We're doing them in strategic places where maybe we don't have a Methodist church and it's like a really growing area, which is great. But at the same time, we're doing a lot of restarts. We're looking at doing restarts, and we're looking at doing like replants and revitalization. And a lot of people say like planting is harder or planting is easier than revitalization. And I do both. I've done both. I've helped revitalize a congregation. I've been trained as a church planter. And I got to say, I don't really think one's harder than the other. They both have different challenges, and they require different skill sets and different kinds of leaders to pull them off. And so it's a kind of a nuanced, long conversation that I don't want to have here. Like, should we be doing revitalization or planting? The answer is we should be doing both, right? But we can't just be lazy in our approach and just be like, yeah, we're gonna take this preacher and we're gonna put him we're gonna rent out a little place in a strip center, and we're gonna have very mediocre to above average contemporary worship music and free coffee, and we're gonna have 1,000 people. No, you're probably not, because Life Church, at least around here, like Life Church is already doing that way better than you. And so what I've been trying to like tell my Methodist colleagues is like, we need to be who we are and do that very well instead of trying to be like somebody else, right? We just need to be who we are, and we really need to focus on non-religious people and non-active Christians instead of just trying to be so good that like other people, like, you know, my church, it just didn't have very good worship, or it didn't have good kids ministry, and I'm leaving it to come here, right? Like that's not helping the kingdom, right? So anyway, that's a long pause. I'm sorry.
Loads of pizza.
You want to talk to the pastor? Not so fast, Buck.
Yeah, that's a problem. Even in a big church, you have to make yourself available. In a big church, it gets harder and harder. The bigger the church you're in, but as this lead minister, you've got to make yourself available to the parishioners, at least on an appointment basis. That's what I try to do, is be on an appointment basis. But our church is small enough that most of the time I can handle a drop in, but not always. But you need to make yourself available to actually for parishioners to talk to you and connect with you, and so you can be their pastor and get to know them.
Go.
They're gonna have to wait in the line like the rest of us.
Okay, I get it. None of these things are outright heretical.
Right.
It still has me wondering, how did church go from this to this.
So this is an actual church service. I remember seeing this video a couple years ago. So this right here, this is not a church service. Okay. This is an apostate, heretical, nationalist service worshiping the state and worshiping a twisted version of the United States. They're worshiping the civic. I call this civic religion. Other people have too. I didn't coin that term, but that's the phrase I like to use. This is civic religion. This is worship of military, worship of state, with like kind of a Jesus coat put on top of it. This is it's apostasy. It's heresy. So this isn't church. So people are like, oh, but see what the church is doing. I'm like, yeah, that's a really easy thing to reply to. That's not the church. They say they are, but they're not. That's not the church. If you find yourself in a church that's doing stuff like this, or even half as egregious as it, you need to get out of there like as fast as possible.
Youth groupification. It kind of feels like all of the youth pastors became lead pastors, took over the churches, and just kept running the churches like youth groups because...
Yeah. I was a youth pastor. Look, as a pastor, I'm always a youth pastor. This is super important. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm a youth pastor, but now I'm a pastor, so I don't deal with youth. If you're in a church and if you're watching and you're in a church, pay attention to how your senior minister, do they talk to the kids? Do they meet with the kids? Are they going to camp? They should be. The pastors of the most important churches in my area all make sure they go to camp with the youth every summer, because we make a vow in our ordination to teach the children, and it's vitally important. It's actually one of the most important things. You don't graduate from being a youth minister to be, I'm the lead pastor, I don't deal with the youth group anymore. No, it's just as important, if not more important, to make sure we're ministering to youth who are not only the church of today, but the church of tomorrow. And that's a really important thing, which is why I don't like, it is totally fine to like send kids out of the service during the sermon. I think that's okay. But they should try to have them at the top of the service, and you should try to bring them back for the sacrament.
Because that's all they know. And it's actually kind of working. Like, record numbers of people are attending, and there appears to be no...
Record numbers of people are attending who were already Christians. Okay, let's make that abundantly clear. These places have converts. I'm not saying they don't. They totally do. This is my own personal gripe is a lot of these churches are rebaptizing churches. And so they're like, look how many baptisms and professions of faith we have. And they baptized like 100 people that day who had already been baptized. And they're like, I'm rededicating my faith. And there's nothing wrong with rededicating your faith. I encourage that. But we can't treat that like, oh, look at all these converts we're getting. It's kind of disingenuous. I've seen it happen before. And I'll tell you why I know that, because I've seen churches post, look at this person we baptized. There's new people coming to the faith. I'm like, that's a Methodist kid that I saw get baptized. So I know that they've been baptized. So stop rebaptizing them, because there's only one baptism for the remission of sin. That's a total rejection of the historical teaching of the church. We baptize once, but we can't be disingenuous and call that new converts. It's not a bad thing when people rededicate their life to Christ. It's just, we have to really focus down in the church planting world on non-Christians and non-active Christians and non-religious people, and have to understand that means this right here won't happen, because it's a lot harder to reach non-religious people, and you're not going to get big crowds like this typically very easily with non-religious people. It's slower and it's harder work.
Signs of stopping. I personally love youth ministry. I love youth groups.
Yeah, me too. I love youth ministry. I love going to camp. It's always exhausting because I'm like busy. But I am always so busy, and I've gotten way busier over the last few years, but I always try and make time to go to 1 week of camp a year, and I never regret it.
Culture, I mean, obviously look at my channel, but I can't help but feel like all of the adults collectively decided that we're just going to have youth group forever, and that's what we call the church. But why do we even have youth group? Like, where?
That's what we call churches that do that. I think there's I tackled this in my last video, right? Like, we have to be careful about, like, this is not what the church looks like now. This is what a segment of the church looks like.
Where did youth group come from? Who invented youth group? Why don't we all just...
Yeah, who invented youth group is a great question. That actually has an origin. Before like the 1970s, there were youth pastors, and they would maybe be like a youth program, but it was not like it is today. The 1970s was a really transformative time for youth ministry, where they started doing games. There's a great article. I think it's Mike Yaconelli, who's like a evangelical youth minister kind of leader guy. And there's a great article he showed at a youth ministers conference I was at 10 years ago, and it was an article from a paper in California, wherever he's was a youth minister, and it was literally the headline of the article was "Two local youth ministers try fun in order to attract students to church." Like we all understand that that's what youth groups do, right? They try to make things fun, right, for students, right? But like the idea of that being like new back in the 70s was really funny. But it also leads me to this other point of when we use fun too much to attract kids to church, they stop going to church when they become adults. They stop because we did not properly integrate them into what the church really is and why the church is actually important. And that has been a massive failure of like modern youth ministry that we really need to start reflecting on. One of my pastors at the first church I worked at, he was adamant that the youth group could not be branded away from the church. Like we couldn't call it another name. And I remember thinking that was such a like, well, it was like, that's such an old person, like weird opinion. And he was completely 100% right, because what he was saying is you're going to give them an identity that's outside of this church, which is not going to last because they're only going to be in the youth group for 6-7 years. Right. And they need to integrate into the fullness of the church. This church's youth group. It's not like its own separate thing. And he was 100% right about that.
Let's go to church as a family.
Oh, sweet. We're going to get some youth group history. This is going to be awesome.
The year is 1780, and a British journalist named Robert Reichus started what we know today as Sunday school.
Yeah.
It was meant to educate.
Yeah, so Sunday school, I separated Sunday school. When I talk about youth group, I'm talking about 7th through 12th grade. I'm talking about like 11-year-olds through 18-year-olds roughly. So if you want to talk about like children, yeah, Sunday school goes way back, like way back.
Underprivileged children in literacy and religious instruction,
right,
with the goal of deterring them away from a life of crime. This later influenced in American religious instruction, with the goal of...
This 6-year-old racked up $16K in mom's credit card playing video games. What a boss. What a legend, dude. That's obviously devastating for that family, but what a legend. I saw another story of a kid who like ordered like hundreds of dollars worth of Pokemon stuff off Amazon using Alexa, because they had like their credit card hooked up to it. Amazing.
Deterring them away from a life of crime. This later influenced an American minister named Francis Edward Clark, and in 1881, he created what we know today as the very first youth group. It was called the Christian Endeavor Society. By 1887, there were 700 societies with over 50,000 members across 33 states. Churches started to see how popular these societies had become and decided to make their own versions.
Now, when I look at these women here, now, I realize I think people tend to look older in old photos, but these women look like they're in their like 20s to me. They do not, that's not what I would consider youth group.
The youth group was born. Around the same time, a new youth organization called YMCA was expanding locations and rapidly growing in popularity. Historical estimates suggest that by the late 1880s to the early 1890s, YMCA had approximately 100,000 to 150,000 members in different locations all throughout the United States. It was originally found...
Really important work the YMCA does, still to this day. They've transitioned away from like their like discipleship mission. They've transitioned into more like public well-being, public fitness, just like overall well-being of the community. They do really, really great stuff.
With the purpose of providing a place for young men to engage in Christian fellowship and activities such as Bible study. And this would serve as an early prototype of youth ministry.
Okay. I like this video. This is great.
Did you know that YMCA stands for Young Men's Christian Association?
Yeah.
Well, if you didn't know that, then you're an idiot, because that's common knowledge. Well, the YMCA is no longer a Christian association for young men. It's not even a Christian association.
But it's just like, yeah, if you didn't, how are you like an adult who didn't know that?
At all. In modern times, they've since changed the target demographic to anyone of any faith and kind of just erased the whole Christian association and young men thing altogether. Ironically, the entire executive leadership team is comprised solely of non-Christian middle-aged women, and I just thought that was sad.
Yeah, it's weird that they still call it that. Now they call it like the Y. And that'd be a really fascinating video, like the history of why that happened. And it would be, I get what he's saying is like, it's kind of sad that this like historic Christian organization is really just kind of secular now.
Anyway, after World War II, modern youth culture began to develop as teens and young adults became powerful consumers that caused social norms to shift.
No, those look like
this
teenagers.
Later shaped the way music, fashion, and media were created and how companies marketed. Many American churches having a desire...
I love Steve Buscemi. Steve Buscemi is like one of my favorite actors. I think he's funny, and I love him in Fargo.
To stay relevant and reach younger generations, embraced modern youth culture and broke away from traditional family structured services. Because of this, families were no longer in services together.
Yeah.
Instead, they hired youth workers and split the services into age groups.
Yeah, I don't think this is working. I actually think it took decades for us to figure this out, but I think it's been a failure. And I'm going to kind of talk about that a little bit as we go along.
It can be seen as a good and a bad thing.
And to be clear, I participated in this failure and advocated for this failure, and now I understand it for what it is because I can see what it's done.
And for me, it's a little bit of both because I want my kids to be around other kids.
Sure,
like they
absolutely.
should be learning things that are age appropriate.
I don't think youth group is a failure. I think how much we separated youth group from the general church was a massive failure.
And I know how distracting they can be during service. On the other hand, not everybody knows exactly what the children's ministry is teaching their kids, and they just want their families to be together. Young men and women should see godly examples of marriage as young men and women sit with their families in the pews.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of how we learn, right? By example.
By the 1950s, youth ministries were a mainstream feature in American Protestant churches, especially among evangelicals. Critics of split
because the evangelicals, to be fair, have always been the more innovative side of Protestantism, right? They're always willing to try like kind of the new thing. Some of it works, some of it doesn't.
Services refer to this as one of the first major blows to the nuclear family structure in American history, from 1960 to 1970.
But I don't always know if the nuclear family structure is always like it's not a biblical model, right? Like families lived together in like compounds, like back in the day, right? Like you'd live on your family farm with like your great grandfather, your grandfather, your uncle. They all like lived in the same area, right? So this idea of like the mom, dad, 2 kids is like a very 20th century American ideal that we got to stop lifting up like it's some kind of theologically like divinely revealed thing. We got to stop doing that.
The rise of Christian contemporary music, aka CCM, was ushered into popularity largely thanks to the Jesus People movement. At this time, churches, eager to reach young people, readapted
Look at that guy. Look at that guy right here. That's what I'm talking about. This guy. Oh yeah. That guy's a youth pastor.
hippie culture and secular youth culture for ministry purposes. What they didn't realize is that this decision, although effective, would reshape the way the modern church would operate in America.
Is that just Jesus? Is that Jonathan Rumi or whatever his name is? Is that the guy who plays Jesus? I think it is in the Chosen.
For decades to come.
Yeah,
As we enter the 1980s and 1990s, the counterculture youth of the 60s and 70s have now become the adults with young families.
Oh man, that mustache makes mine look stupid. That is incredible.
This means that they are now the key demographic for church growth and the leaders of the new church plant movement we'd see into the 2000s.
And this is where I was a youth. Okay, so this is like 100% true, right? You had the baby boomers and Gen X growing up, becoming the leaders in the church in the 90s and the 2000s, and they implement a lot of this stuff. And I was in like the prime era of like youth group culture, I feel like. And I think it was probably a net negative for the church. Not all of it was bad, but I think looking back, a lot of people just never integrated into church as an adult. They loved their youth group, they loved their youth pastor, and then they turned 18 and the church was like, hey, come join us in regular church where it's a lot different. And they were like, this is terrible. And that's because they never learned to appreciate or never learned to integrate or understand the traditions, because a lot of youth group culture like rejected tradition, rejected reverence for sacrament, those kinds of things. So yeah.
Most of this new generation rejected traditional church structures of yesteryear and began to utilize secular music, art, and fashion as a means of evangelism and church growth.
Which is just hilarious to me because Christian media is notoriously 5 to 10 years behind in fashion. Also, I'm in a different shirt. But there were a lot of good that came out of this, you know, like the church skate scene was kind of cool. Like every church had a skate park. That was fun.
Yeah, I remember that. There were churches installing stuff like that. We're like, we got to reach the youth. We got to put in a skate park. And it's like, yeah. I mean, I shouldn't dunk on this too much because some of it works, right? Like some of it, if you're doing it intentionally and you're doing it in like such a way where you're like authentically trying to reach students. But you know what I found? And I told, my dad went to camp for the first time to work with youth. And he was a Sunday school teacher along with my mom for years and years and years. And one of the things I was talking to him about, and I always tell young youth ministers this, is that your age doesn't matter. when you're working with youth. It really doesn't. Your energy and your attitude matters, and if you respect the kids and listen to them and actually are intentional with them, they will love you and respect you. And the rookie mistake you can make, because there's a lot of young men I know that watch this channel, I can see it in my analytics, a lot of you, if you are working with youth, I want you to hear this. Do not try to get the kids to like you. That is the rookie mistake. You want them to respect you, because respect goes way further than being liked.
Fundamentalism is usually a problem.
Why don't you get out of that stupid liberal church you're in and get in a leather-lung, Bible-believing King James Baptist church?
It's
I feel attacked. He's talking to me. He's talking to me. Sorry, dude. I'm gonna keep preaching a message. So, sorry.
rigid, legalistic, and can drive people away from the faith by prioritizing rules over relationship.
Originally not a bad term. It referred to a movement that had many positive qualities. Now today, the word fundamentalist usually has a negative connotation, and usually it means
Yeah, because they're responsible for a lot of the hate that goes on in the world.
someone who's closed-minded, someone who's dogmatic, someone who's mean-spirited, often someone who's anti-intellectual.
The push to make churches more accessible,
Because that is what it is.
welcoming, and culturally relevant has opened doors for those who might not ever step foot into a church. The shift away from the fire and brimstone sermons and dour hymnals has allowed churches to connect with younger generations who crave authenticity over dogma.
But here's the thing. My take on this is that we went from like the Bible beating which was not every church, by the way, to like the welcoming and like guys in golf carts in the parking lot who like you get out of the car and they pull up and they're like, "Howdy neighbor, welcome to church," and then you like get in their golf cart and stuff. That's like a kind of creepy to young generations now. It's like you're overzealous to bring them into your church and it kind of comes off weird. And so hospitality, you got to like draw it back a little bit. It has to be a little bit more organic. It's okay to have door greeters and stuff like that, but you can't just like, you can't make, if your church feels like Disney World, then it's not church, because Disney World, you're paying to be there and get that crazy amount of service. And there's a difference between being a Christian service and Christian welcome and being like kind of creepy to new people. And there's a fine line, and you got to be really careful in that, because what happens is when you're like overly like in their face, like welcome to church, it's not authentic, right? They're talking about authenticity over dogma. Well, it goes the other direction and it's just not authentic anymore. People are like, you just want me to be in this church. You don't really care about me. And they can sense that.
Use of contemporary music, relatable language, and creative environments can break down barriers, making the gospel feel approachable rather than archaic. For many, a church that feels alive, vibrant worship, engaging visuals, and even a decent cup of coffee can be a gateway to...
Nothing wrong with a little coffee at church, snacks, those kind of things help people feel comfortable. There's nothing wrong with that.
Exploring Christianity in a world that's increasingly secular.
I think the modern church has done a lot of great things, right? They've created an environment that is inviting. They've talked about things that the traditional church wouldn't otherwise talk about, like mental health. So just because something's new doesn't mean it's bad.
No,
it doesn't.
I agree with that 100%. We got to be careful not to be like, oh, all these new things are bad, because some of them aren't. And like, I'm not even a hater on contemporary worship. I actually think it can be done tastefully and really well, but it can also be done very poorly, just like traditional worship can be done very poorly.
I mean, it's good, but it definitely doesn't mean it's bad either. A lot of the old hymns that we know and love started off as new songs, right? And I'm sure...
And let me tell you something right now, though. When we're at camp and we're singing the contemporary songs, and then they'll bring in like an old hymn, but they'll like update it. It'll be like an old hymn, but with acoustic guitar. You know which ones the kids sing the loudest and belt out? The hymns. Every time. I've seen it happen 1,000 times, because they're easy to sing. That's the key. The hymns are easy to sing, and that matters in worship.
That there was somebody out there protesting those, saying, no, we got to get back to the traditions of just humming. No words. Remember, we just hum.
This is a real sermon, I'm pretty sure. I think I've seen this before. It's absolutely unhinged. It's like kind of demonic, actually.
I may have missed the point, but I'm sure you'll get the hang of it.
It seems like we've...
I'm ready for some clips. I love like cringe church clips. I need to do some videos with that. That'd be fun. Because it just every now and then goofy stuff happens at churches, and it's always fun.
Turn the entire church into one giant youth group. What started as a well-meaning...
See, like, okay, this is not for me, right? Like the hoodie and like all that kind of stuff, but I don't think this is bad. It's just not for me. But you can easily cross the line into entertainment in the church. But like a guy in a hoodie who's just like trying to preach the word faithfully, as long as they're administering the sacraments, I'm fine with that. It doesn't really bother me.
An effort to reach young people dating back to the Christian Endeavor Society in the 1880s and the post-World War II embrace of youth culture has now snowballed into a model where spectacle often overshadows substance.
Like this stuff, this is a pastor that I know well, is in my city. But this this stuff is where it's entertainment. When you're doing a sermon and it costs you thousands of dollars to get water effects, stop. Like, it's becoming consumeristic at that point. And I know they're going to argue, but we're connecting people with the gospel stories, like, you know. And it's like, yeah, but at what point is the cost benefit not good anymore? Like, where you could spend it on something else. Instead of like this crazy water effect.
The flashing lights, fog machines, and high-energy worship sets that defined youth ministries.
Like, this doesn't really bother me like the old, like, like, this doesn't seem like it's like lights are going crazy. This is just like a choir singing with some like some instruments, like an orchestra in the background. Like this, I don't have an issue with this.
In the 80s and 90s are now the blueprint for entire congregations.
This is where it gets a little bit more like this kind of vibe, is where it gets a little too entertainment, where it's like multiple singers and they're like look like rock stars up there, and where it just doesn't feel like it's worshiping God. It feels like it's just like really good music, which turns into like consumeristic entertainment.
While these tactics draw in crowds, they risk creating a church experience that feels more like a concert than a sacred space for encountering God.
Yeah, and I think that this opens up the conversation about like what is sacred, right? And I think we have to be very careful not to close ourselves off to what the Holy Spirit wants to do. My whole thing is this: in those churches where it feels entertainment driven, my question is, the only way I think, and this goes for traditional services too, that you can keep the main thing, even with all your lights and all that stuff, are you administering the sacrament? Are you doing it every week? And are you pointing to that sacrament as the center of your worship? If not, then the music becomes the center of the worship and it becomes an idol. And or the minister's got $8 million worth of clothes on and he gives a 45-minute sermon, well, then the minister becomes the idol. But if those churches like that, and Evan Raugus did a video about this where he showed like a contemporary church and they did communion that week. If you're administering the sacrament and you're like, this is the center of our worship, this is what the church has done, but you have like some lights and some music, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because you're keeping the main thing at the center. I think that's key.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Next Step classes where you can get your questions answered and learn a little bit more about our church. Anybody have any questions? Yes, go ahead. You in the front there? Hi, yeah, what is your stance on homosexuality? Oh,
yeah.
Great question. We love everyone here.
Right, I hate this answer. It's a terrible answer. Everybody knows, most people on this channel know I'm progressive on this issue. I have a video about it. I'm not gonna I know you can like link it or whatever so it pops up. I don't know how to do that. I'm a cringe millennial, so I don't really know how to do that. But I made a video about this, but I hate this answer when somebody asks that and they do the "we love everybody" here. And it's like, yeah, do you affirm them though? Or do you think it's a sin? Just be honest. And that's okay. If you think it's a sin, that's a majority of Christians. So just say that.
Follow-up question. What is your stance on abortion?
I said we love everyone.
All right.
If you're
That's an issue I have with some of the mega churches, is that they're so into growth that they won't tackle hard subjects because they know it's controversial, make people uncomfortable, and it doesn't get as many people in the door. And I think that's a mistake.
your church's answer to heavy questions is, we love everyone.
Right.
You're probably in a youth groupified church. I'm not saying we can't have good music or lights or wear cool clothing. I'm just asking, is church no longer sacred? You know,
he's being very kind here and just asking an important question. He's not like, modern worship is bad. He's just asking, like, what's the line here to where we've gone too far?
our pursuit of reaching people and rejecting cringe fundamentalist religiosity, I fear we've embraced something far worse, in my opinion. Cold, disingenuous corporatism.
Yeah, corporatism. I think that's a good word to put it. It's what it looks like, what the rest of the world looks like. And this is what my friends always tell me. My friends who are non-religious. Okay, here we go. Non-religious, non-active Christians or atheists or agnostics, who some of them like who would consider coming to church, they always tell me, just sing the hymns, just do church. They're like, it's so cringe to us when you try to like be relevant. They're like, you are relevant because you've been around for 2,000 years. You don't need like this to be relevant. Just be who you are. And they don't like that. And so that's a pretty unanimous opinion among my non-religious friends. And I listen to that because it's like, okay, if we're trying to reach non-religious people, maybe we should just try being us, and just being authentic and loving and serving people. And there are, and you can grow that way. My church is growing that way, where you don't have to be wild to have growth. Just be authentic and be yourself.
If you've ever dealt with salesmen, then you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Churches have just become businesses. Feels like that, right? Where you show up and they put you through this like sales process.
Yeah, that's kind of my issue. I've served in churches where there was way too high of an emphasis put on production value. And let me be clear with something. You should not endeavor to be sloppy on Sunday morning worship. You should endeavor to do it well, without mistakes, right? All that stuff. But like when you put production value up as an idol, like where it's the most important thing, like, no, we don't make mistakes. We don't slip up. We don't have awkward 2-minute pauses in the service. It doesn't feel authentic to people. Like, for instance, at my church, we try to do well, but we make mistakes. I'll like jump up too early. I miss something in the bulletin. And I usually like make a joke about it. I'm like, oh, I'm just too eager this morning. Like, people laugh. And it's fine. I don't get embarrassed, right? And that, I think, is a more authentic experience for people because they're like, oh, these are just people who are here to worship God, not put on a product. And I think a lot of our young people who are joining the church or resonate with that because like, oh, they're not here to like impress us. They're just here to worship God, and that's what I'm here to look for.
It feels very degrading. I hate it.
Churches and church congregations are spoken of using marketing language. It's like it's treated as a means to get people into these marketing funnels that culminate in church membership and church service. They make me want to puke.
Yeah, it's becoming a massive problem. You know how many seminars I went to about this stuff? Like when I was learning to be a pastor and they were like training me up. They were like, oh, young Matthew, you are talented and 18 and you want to be a minister. They sent me to so many trainings, which I'm very grateful for. Thank you, United Methodist Church. I appreciate your investment in me. It's made me a better person. And I learned a lot in those things, but I learned a lot of bad things too, because a lot of this marketing stuff, it feels corporate and it never has resonated with me. It always like felt weird to me. It's like, oh, we have to make sure we're all in super nice pressed suits and like it's all like put together well, and we practice the service 8,000 times to make sure it all goes super well. It's like you should practice the service enough to where you don't look like a Dumbo up there, like you are lazy and unprepared. But you don't. The king in the worship sanctuary is Jesus, not the production. The king is Jesus.
It's okay to grow up and not be the cool church. We need to be okay with being a little offensive to the world's standards. Yeah. I'm not saying we should be jerks on purpose. I'm just reiterating what 1 Corinthians 1:18 says. The message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing.
Yeah. To those who are perishing, Paul means the non-believers, right? The message of the cross to those who are perishing is ridiculous. It's foolishness. They think we're fools. And they think what we do on Sunday often, not always. I think this is a generalization by Paul that he would even admit is not everyone, right? But many people, they're like, this is foolish. You say love your enemies and you're going to give 10% of your money to the church. Like, what? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's foolishness to those who don't understand it. And so it's okay for us to be different. It's okay.
They already think the gospel is foolishness. We might as well embrace the foolishness.
You've got as much chance of a sinner visiting a church building as you have a criminal visiting a police station. They don't want to come to church.
That's an excellent quote. It's so true, too. It's like, I don't think we will start legitimately getting non-religious people at a high rate until we do a couple things. Until we stop. I personally think we won't get non-religious people until we become a little bit more inclusive. I know there's a lot of disagreement about that, but I personally believe that. And two, until we stop trying to be something we're not. When we start trying to live into our traditions and live into who we are, I think we'll start being authentic to people. And until we start putting most of our energies towards service to the community, external service, not interior programs.
Yeah. The whole idea of the Great Commission is take the church to them.
Yeah.
Go into all the world.
Love them or hate them, John MacArthur brings up a solid point. Don't
John MacArthur just passed away, by the way.
Ever water down the gospel? If the truth offends, then let it offend. People have been living their whole lives in offense to God. Let them be offended for a while.
I don't believe that spirituality by itself can hold the attention of a person's heart to the degree that they can be transformed. In order for you to hold their attention, you need a level of entertainment.
Yeah, and I just disagree.
That was a lie.
The stylistic, seeker-friendly, attractive church is competing with other entertainment venues, and they are going to lose that game.
Yeah, that's my point about, I told somebody the other day, one of the things that's been most helpful to me in my personal leadership journey as I become a leader in my local church and also in my denomination, one of the things that's been most helpful for me is the movie Moneyball. Because one of the great quotes, that's a great movie about challenging systems and challenging assumptions. And that's what I spend a lot of time doing. And one half of my job, I do strategic work for the denomination, and one half of my job for the district. And I like to challenge assumptions, right? And this assumption challenging is very important. Like in the movie, the general manager, Billy Beane, says, we got to stop playing New York Yankee baseball because we can't afford New York Yankee baseball. We have to do what we can do and do it very well, which led to success for them. It's a great story. But yeah, if churches are trying to compete in the entertainment space with companies who have a profit incentive, you're going to lose.
The reality is that the younger generation, they don't want that. They want actual substance.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. 100% agree with that. Gen Z's over that stuff.
Churches are purposely shallow and dumbed down so they can reach consumer-driven Americans. They've become so immature that they're no different than youth groups. Also, sorry if I sound different. I just woke up. I had to do this in 2 days.
I have that exact smoothie cup, and that's a disgusting place to pause. I'm sorry.
So why is this happening? Well, I'd like to give you a one-size-fits-all answer, but there really isn't one. Some churches are being led by carnal men who are probably not even saved. And that's not even my opinion. That's just statistics.
I think the greatest threat is to the church in our generation.
It's pastors. Honestly.
Some churches are being led by people who...
Did you see that guy? You know why I believe this guy? Because of this face.
Honestly.
Like, that's a face of a guy who's just looking around him at, like, the antics going on, and he's just like, we got to stop doing this stuff.
Some churches are being led by people who genuinely want to see people saved, but they're just going about it the wrong way. What they fail to realize is that church is not meant as a hub to get people saved. It's really not even meant primarily for the unbeliever.
If you know Jesus, I am sorry to break it to you, this church is not for you.
It's
what?
Primarily for
I think that's Stephen Furtick,
the unbeliever.
If you know Jesus,
if you know Jesus,
I am sorry to break it to you, this church is not for you.
I'm sure what he means there is like, we have so many new Christians in here, but you need some disciple believers in your church though to edify the new Christians. That's not a good message. It looks like it was from a long time ago. I'm sure he regrets saying that, or whoever that was probably would say it differently.
It's meant primarily for the believer, so they can have a place to gather, to worship their God, to be equipped and sent out to bring people in. It's not meant to completely be filled with unbelievers in order for the pastor to persuade them into Christianity.
I would nuance that and say most of what I do on Sunday morning, I try to do language centered on the guest, right? Like I explain communion every time I can, and people are like, well, we know what it means. I'm like, yeah, but a lot of people are here for the first time, or they're newer and they don't know. So yeah, I'm going to say it. So I think we should be targeting new people with our language and service, but you can't go too far. Again, like everything, it's a balance. It's a nuance.
I think it's important for the church to remember the church does not primarily exist for the unbeliever in its assembly. And so what I mean is that,
yeah, I get that. I understand that.
Yeah, we go out and we reach the lost. The tragedy is that churches are acting like the assembly of the body, the corporate worship of the body is meant to try to bring people in so that they can get saved. It's wonderful when that's a byproduct of what the church is doing. But the church is called to gather and to be the church and to speak truth and to worship and
let me be a Wesleyan here and say it's both. It's not an either or. I don't like either or things. It's both. The church exists to edify the believer so they can go out in the world and bring new people to know Jesus. It's both.
To honor God in its midst. And again, I think when unbelievers do come in, they see that authenticity. They say, wow, God is in their midst, right? God is here, and it can lead.
People know it when they see it, y'all. They know it when they see it.
the transformations.
Churches, having a desire to reach consumer-driven unbelievers, decided to throw away all the things that make the church the church. So if you want to reach consumer-driven, unbelieving Americans, then you're going to have to throw out all the stuff that would offend them. You know, like theology, learning the Bible, and instead of giving them the gospel, we've created thousands, probably millions of false conversions. Now, I'm not saying that unbelievers...
Oh, I don't know if I'd say that. I mean, if somebody's baptized in the Trinity, whatever. But yeah, the preaching has gotten a little too life coachy. That's actually something I try not to do a ton of, is like life coach sermons. Like I'm not gonna probably ever do a sermon series. I've done like sermon series on like relationships and marriage and stuff because I think that's important. But I'm never gonna like do a sermon series on like how to be a good friend or something like that. Like that comes up in sermons as like a topic, but I'm not. I guess I know you get what I'm trying to say. Like I'm not gonna do like a sermon series on like life coachy kind of stuff.
Believers don't belong in the church, because absolutely they do. We should go out and bring them in, but we should do that as a body. We shouldn't leave that up to the marketing team. But there's almost no point to even bringing unbelievers to these churches anyways, because they're not hearing the gospel that saves.
That is $1 million smile, literally.
So they're getting these like motivational speeches that give them life advice and, you know, send them on their way, which is exactly what the American consumer wants. Youth groupification has little to do with the size of the church, so whether or not you go to a big church or a small church, that's not the problem. It has everything to do with the spiritual maturity of a church and the approach they take to get people in the door. At the end of the day, if somebody who wants something different than the world has to offer comes to your church and gets exactly what the world is offering, then we have a problem. I think we should give them something different. Okay, bye.
Okay. That was a amazing for the last video. Sorry guys, I've done that a couple times this week. It's fine. See, I'm not going to edit that out. You want to know why? Because I like to be authentic for you guys. So you can see I'm not perfect, right? That was a great video. That's one of the best videos we've done on this channel. Excellent, excellent work. Go like and subscribe to the original content creator. I think it's called, let me get it. Dizzy Disciple. Go subscribe to that channel so that they keep making content. That was amazing. I love that. So yeah, I think it's something we really need to be thinking about, all the topics that came up in this video. But yeah, make sure you go like and subscribe to the original content creator. If you like this commentary today, make sure you like and subscribe to my channel as well, because that's one of the best ways you can help a young content creator such as myself. I'm young and new. We'll go with that. But I'm Reverend Matt, and I'm the Connectionalist. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.